Hello and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism, a podcast about urbanism and stuff. I'm joined here today by two of my very biggest besties. Nick Laporte, say hi.
Hello and welcome back, everybody.
And Ethan Myers, say hi.
It's so good to be here, folks. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of Radio Free Urbanism.
I'm stoked to be here with you guys. In the chat, we've also got Austin and Sean checking in. Excited to have you guys here for the podcast live today. And Jen is also here. Jen says, yo. And I say, yo back. If you want to join the live chat and check out the show live, you can go to patreon.com/radiofreeurbanism and sign up to support the show for as little as $1 a month. And then you can join these cool people as we record and even see some gaffes before we start the show too. But with that, let's get into our updates. Nick Laporte, tell us what's going on.
We got a looming election here in BC, and I think it's the first one that I've ever been anxious about. You know, I've been through, I'm in my mid-30s now, and I've been part of many elections in Canada throughout my life now. I remember the first one when I was 18 years old, the federal election, but this is the provincial election. It's the first one I've actually felt kind of worried about. So, you know, we've had the NDP in power, which is like a left-leaning party right now. And the Liberals were in power before, but they're actually a conservative party. But right now, the Conservatives and the NDP are duking it out, the incumbent trying to stay put. And it really worries me because we've had, in my opinion, a relatively good run with this current NDP government, especially when it comes to housing. They seem to be the most progressive when it comes to actually addressing the housing crisis that I've seen in all of North America, let alone just Canada. It's crazy that every month it seemed like there was a new policy coming out to help with housing. And to see how popular the Conservative leader is right now, and we just had the debate last night on Tuesday night, and he's he has nothing. He's talking about plastic straws. He's got no plan. He's got no costed plan, and he wants to scrap the housing stuff that has come in. It's just it's scary to see how popular that is. With there's nothing there. It's is nobody paying attention at all? It just scares me. So when I go for a walk and I see all these blue Conservative signs, I'm like, are you guys paying attention? It just makes me sad. It makes me sad and disappointed in our culture to see we're going that way. And I know with the Americans here, I'm sure Ethan, you're feeling it. You guys got an election coming up next month. So
yep. When's your guys' election?
It's on the 19th.
Oh,
so
okay.
20 days or 10 days. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're American, register to vote. That's all I can tell you for the American side. I don't know how the Canadian election process works if you need to register to vote there, but
it's similar. But I'm going to say the same thing. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but just take a gander. At least do some investigating. You know, it's just disappointing. I was on the Vancouver subreddit, and somebody came in who was a conservative, and they were kind of saying, "Hey, we don't need to be, portrayed as just stupid people." And they asked all these questions what has this government done for this? What has this government done for this? What have they done for housing? And it was have you paid attention? We're not even saying do some research. Have you been paying attention? So to ask that question, it's there's no wonder someone's calling you stupid because you're not even paying attention. Anyway, that's just my little rant there. And same thing. Go out and vote. I don't care who you vote for. I do, but I'm going to say I don't. Just go out and vote. Anyway, Ethan, you can take it away.
Yeah, well, let's hear Alex. Alex needs to commentate on this.
I have some thoughts on this. My thing is, it seems like the current BC government, I don't live there and I'm not paying more attention to it than I am when those news stories come up on this show. But it seems like they're actually doing something. And frankly, I don't care what your t-shirt says. Right now, we're in a housing crisis. We need people who are doing stuff and who are trying things. And I think there are a lot of things that the British Columbian government has done recently that has actually been helping the situation. And here in Alberta, this is something we're struggling with. Even the opposition party in Alberta, the Alberta NDP, have not seemed to have as much of a plan for housing as the BC NDP, who are currently in power, have. So I do not care what your t-shirt says. We need people who are doing things, and it's frustrating when other people, their plan is just hating on the little things that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we can't forget either that urbanism is inherently political at the end of the day. And if you want to see positive change in your community, you have to go out and vote and understand who you're voting for as well, too. It's not just the big ticket, it's not premiers, governors, presidents that you're voting for that are going to be the top dogs that are going to be making that change all the time. But it's also your city council members as well, too. People that are anybody on that whole ballot. That whole ballot matters, and just doing your research on that is super important.
Yeah, yeah, and I'd like to say as well, like on that municipal level, like these are the people who are doing things. I had a conversation with a former councillor, a city councillor last week, and he was saying that 90% of things, or 75% of things, are municipal issues, like your roads, your sidewalks, your transit. All of these things, the way that you get to school, right? Schools might be provincial, but the way that you get to school is not. Your hospitals might be provincial, but the way you get to the hospital, unless it's in an ambulance, is not, right? And so I think these are really important things to remember. In the previous municipal election in Calgary, we had 46.8% voter turnout. And that was in an election with 10 open seats. 10 out of 15 seats were wide open for the taking. We had a fresh opportunity for a fresh mayor. We had a bunch of new opportunities for councillors, and only 46.8% of voters turned out. Now, I'll remind you, this was late 2021, so there still was a little bit of the COVID stuff going on, but frankly, not much. And historically, voter turnout in municipal elections has been very, very low. So go out and vote. Whoever you vote for, just like actually participate. This is the bare minimum. And we might be preaching to the choir. As far as our audience is concerned, you might all be, every single time voters. But yeah, seriously, guys, seriously, you need to vote. This is the bare minimum, just participation. Opportunity.
It seems strange, and I guess it is coming down to the amount of exposure that each level gets, but the amount of people that vote in federal versus provincial versus your local municipal goes down, but the importance almost goes up in reverse to how many people actually pay attention to it. But
yeah.
But yeah, thanks for
you can also check your voter registry, everything like that.
And Ethan.
Yeah, we're going to change up the announcements a little bit here from that topic. I just wanted to let everybody know that I am doing a little hangout in Portland, Oregon, open to everyone out there. It's going to be October 26th at noon. We're meeting up at Pioneer Square. So if you are available, that's going to be going on. Just wanted to let everybody know that since it is kind of coming up. And yeah, that's my little announcement there.
Fantastic.
It's a little meetup. I'm meeting up with some people from all around the urbanist community, and we're just going to be hanging out, riding Max. The 26th of October. That is correct.
Nice.
And where do you have more event info on that?
Yeah, you can actually go and check out. I made a community post on my YouTube channel, which is pretty sure is linked in the channel description if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can check out my Discord. There's constant communication about that event there too.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's going to be fun. I know everybody was hoping I could make it. Unfortunately, you'll just have to see Ethan there.
We couldn't get a tax write-off for Alex's flight, Nick's.
No. That is going to be a lot of fun, though. That's
You'll take the train.
Ooh,
Cascade.
Oh, man. Yeah, we need more trains, let me tell you. But I'm going to share my screen here.
Screen sharing this early.
We're screen sharing this early, and you'll be able to hear it. It won't be as entertaining, but we had a bit of a conversation in our chat, in our Patreon. Can you guys hear that? Can you guys hear that?
Scared the shit out of me.
Okay, sorry.
Loud.
So we had a bit of a conversation in our Patreon about wheels and 2 wheels good, 4 wheels, 6 wheels, that sort of thing. Well, so this clip that I'm showing here is from the movie The Stupids. And basically this man realizes that somebody is stealing his garbage. So overnight, while he's sleeping, somebody is taking his garbage, and he's out here trying to figure out who it is. And I'll skip forward a little bit here, if I can, if it lets me. There we go. Okay. So eventually he sees the garbage truck coming down the street. And it comes and just snags up his garbage. And the way the movie, if you're just listening, the way the movie sets this up is like there's a spooky man who comes out, takes his garbage bin, and takes it away. Anyways, he goes into the garage. So he goes and chases after this garbage truck on his rollerblades. I just thought that was funny. I tried sharing it in the Discord server. I wanted to share that specific scene, but the file was too big for me to share it. But I hope everybody enjoyed that. I don't know. I just wanted to make sure I shared
What's that guy's name? Is it Tom something?
Oh, I have no idea.
Anyway.
Let me...
I think he was married to Roseanne for a while.
Oh, really?
I think so. I can't remember.
Here, let's see. But I'll put the link to the movie in the show notes and the description. It's called The Stupids, and you can watch it on YouTube for free with Italian subtitles. So you're welcome, everybody. That's my update.
Italian subtitles, very helpful. Thank you, Alex.
You're very welcome. It is actually a really funny movie. It is very stupid. But Nick, do you want to give us your story? We can go to the news now. After my update.
In typical Nick fashion, I'm not coming in with a news story. I'm coming with a topic that I wanted to talk about. It's about shaming. So this is something that I do very lightly. And say I'm riding my bike to work. Along the route, I have a few modal filters. And one in particular, I very often see drivers going the wrong way, or like they have to go into oncoming traffic to get around the diverter to get into the neighborhood street where the bike route is. I often see this on my way to work. And I do something is I smile and I wag my finger very deliberately at them as I pass them by. And sometimes they see me, sometimes they just give me a shrug and they go, or they do the oh sorry thing or whatever, like oopsies type of thing. And it's basically the only thing I ever do to shame drivers. But I wanted to talk about that. Should we be shaming drivers? Not just for driving. I don't think we should be shaming drivers for driving, especially in places where it's a necessity to do anything productive in many of our North American cities. But for certain behaviors that are bad, for speeding, people who are, again, like in this example, going the wrong way through traffic diverters, or for idling their cars. And at what level should we be shaming them if we are shaming them? It's just like an open discussion I wanted to talk about, because I find in some situations or some topics, shaming is seen as something that we shouldn't do. But other things, it's absolutely acceptable. One of them, I think, is smoking cessation. That's something in our culture now. It's very normal to shame people for smoking, because we know, A, it's bad for the person doing it, and B, it's bad for the people who are nearby that happening, even though there's a whole dichotomy about idling cars. But I think we should start shaming people for bad things they do with their cars. I'm just saying. What do you guys think?
You kind of brought that to the group where you knew everybody would agree with you on that, at least.
We'll see.
Unless Alex has a nice counterpoint there. But yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you there, Nick. I think shaming drivers is a very good thing. There's often been kind of this almost us against them narrative that's been generated over time for cars versus literally every other mode of transportation that's out there, since cars just don't really fit as well into the kind of multimodal use patterns that we see just on our own development out here in North America. Now, yeah, we should be shaming drivers for poor action. I mean, other drivers should be shaming drivers for poor action. It's just something that we should be doing to hold people accountable and really kind of hold people to following the rules, so that way there's no normalization of breaking road rules.
I think that does happen though with other drivers too, which usually comes out as a long honk. Sometimes they're very long honk. Maybe that's the case. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, Ethan, you say you brought this to the two people who are going to agree with you. Honestly, I think everyone would agree with you. Like, there was a video recently shared around Threads of somebody speeding on Deerfoot in Calgary. It's a big highway that cuts through the city, and they were passing on the right shoulder and wound up slipping into the ditch, and they spun around in the ditch, and then for some reason decided that it would be a great idea for them to post this on social media. But of course, everybody agrees. Everybody agrees this person did something absolutely stupid and endangered people. And so I don't think, and Austin notes that's how the Gaudreaus were killed, right? I don't think that anybody would disagree with shaming people who are putting the lives of other people at risk. And so, yeah, no. And I think there are different ways that you can do that. You mentioned, if you're in another vehicle, honking your horn. And I do think that we need to take that sort of thing more seriously than we do, because as much as we honk our horn, we just kind of we move on afterwards, right? And a lot of the time there's not much that the police can do. There's not much that you can do. And that person just kind of gets to go on their merry way and probably do something dangerous again. Now, I want to note as well, in this video that I mentioned, that was somebody very intentionally doing something dangerous and dumb, right? There's a difference between that and somebody speeding on a road that has clearly been designed with the idea of speeding in mind, right? And so I think there are two situations that we can talk about here, is people doing dangerous things intentionally and people doing dangerous things because it was just easy to do it, because, well, I'm just going somewhere and I'm not paying as much attention to my speedometer, or I'm not, I feel more comfortable driving fast because the road is very wide. So I think those are two different conversations that we can have. I think the public shaming for the people who are doing things very intentionally dangerous to our kids crossing the streets to get to their schools, right? Dangerous for us because I'm still just a sack of flesh, right? I'm not really more impervious to cars than kids are. But then there's also just, we've built a city that just kind of encourages that sort of behavior. And so people who end up doing those things because of that built environment, I think that's a different conversation to be had. If you show somebody speeding on a road that is designed like you're supposed to go 80 kilometers an hour on it, but this posted speed limit is 60 kilometers an hour, well, of course, somebody's going to drive 80 kilometers an hour. I don't think there's much use in shaming that person for going the design speed. But I do think there are places where we can have that conversation about being more intentional as drivers, but also being more intentional about the way that we build our city, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. The design of the city makes a huge impact, and we've talked about this ad nauseum. This is a perennial thing we talk about, is how the design of our roads, turns into how we move. And yeah, it's something we need to deal with. But yeah, I'm a big fan of shaming. I don't go out of my way. I'm not screaming at people, but just some cheeky shaming, I think, can go a long way for some people, just to slowly shift the culture a little bit more, but it could go too far, I think, in some ways,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't agree with someone just honking at someone else for going 1 mile over the speed limit, but if you cut off 3 lanes of traffic and you want to give that person a piece of their mind, then yeah, I think that there's some sort of rational line when it comes down to it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the same thing when we talk about shaming as we talk about enforcement, right? It's not going to be the end all be all. It's not something that can fix all the problems. But it's one tiny thing we could possibly do in our lives to hopefully change people's behavior. But yeah, again, I just have to repeat, this is not about driving and shaming people for driving. Absolutely not. because, hey, I have a car and it gets used once in a while, but we'll talk about that later. So I don't know. Do you have anything else to say about this? I think I've said my piece. Shaming drivers. Good. All right, Alex, you take it away.
I just think, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
No,
I was
wrap
going
us
to
up.
say, it's just kind of like, it's a supplemental thing to the infrastructure, you know? It's just ensuring people are using it properly. Obviously, the infrastructure comes first, but then enforcement of using said infrastructure comes second.
Yeah. So our next story here comes from Livewire Calgary, which does some great local reporting. If you are in Calgary, or even if you're not, please support Livewire. They work very hard over there to bring us just like local quality journalism. And this is federal cash allows the restart of Calgary's downtown office conversion program. If you're not familiar, Calgary started its office conversion program a little while ago, and it actually saw a lot of success. I'm going to read this article. It's pretty short, but I just want to make sure that everybody kind of gets the details here. It says, and I'll credit Darren Krause wrote this, by the way. Additional downtown conversion cash is welcome, according to one city councilor, as there's a wait list of potential development applications. The city of Calgary said Thursday that they've received $52.5 million from Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's Housing Accelerator Fund to restart the Downtown Development Incentive Program. Under the program, eligible developers can get up to $75 per square foot for office to residential conversion projects, up to a maximum of $15 million per property. It was first launched in 2021 with 11 developments approved under the program, with 1,500 new residential units created. The first completed project, the Cornerstone, opened in April 2024. The program, however, was paused as demand for the incentive outstripped the available funding. The plan has received international attention, including an article in the Wall Street Journal. And I'll pause here just to note that this program has obviously been quite successful. Downtown Calgary is basically a giant office park, and we're working on transitioning that, especially as work from home becomes more common, and there are some other office parks opened in the suburbs where space for those offices is cheaper. So there's been a lot of shifts happening, and this program is basically designed to take advantage of this. It goes on, quoting Mayor Gondek, it says, transforming unused office space into homes for Calgarians is not only a practical solution, but a transformative one. By partnering with the private sector, we're boosting the number of downtown residents, energizing local businesses, and enhancing public spaces. This initiative strengthens our economy, improves public safety, and addresses the critical need for housing. Councillor Terry Wong, whose Ward 7 covers much of the downtown, said this was a good news story for downtown. Quote, well, certainly we're looking to expand our residential population in the downtown core. There's a waiting list of applications out there, so additional funds allow us to come to the marketplace a lot faster. Wong also said that the downtown strategy prescribes a greater emphasis on providing amenity space to go along with the added residential space. They also want to encourage more office to hotel conversions and post-secondary spaces in downtown. And it says, thus far, $147 million has been invested in the Downtown Development Incentive Program. It's one of 4 programs to incentivize redevelopment in downtown Calgary. So that is great news for us. There's more money going into this program. It's been a huge success already, and I'm optimistic to see where this is going and what more we can do. So yeah, thoughts.
That's awesome. I mean, when it comes to downtowns, that's what you want. You want people living there. That's what makes a downtown feel alive, is just the happenings. Like, the thing that we're fortunate here in Vancouver is that our downtown is very lived in. Like, most of the high rises you see are condos and apartments. Like, there are office towers, but generally it's a very, very lived in downtown compared to many places that I've been. Like, I was in Detroit last month, and I was talking to Todd about this and how if you don't know, the GM Center looks like an evil genius is like home in the city, right? And in Detroit. And he was talking about them replacing it because they can't afford to do this. Not only because, they don't have a lot of money in Detroit, but also those specific buildings, those office buildings, GM's buildings, aren't really set up to even do that investment. It'd be more expensive to do that than to just tear them down and build something else. So it's really great in Calgary that they have this opportunity to actually retrofit these buildings for people to live in them. So this is one step in the direction of making the downtown feel alive and be more vital. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, really a lot of the problems with these office buildings kind of came in the 1950s when they were really kind of segmenting away from being, the more mixed, more open concept style offices that existed back then. And it's just these conversions of these offices are in a lot of ways quite a bit of a pain for cities to do. However, regardless, cities are built by the people that live in them. And at the end of the day, doing these conversions it's going to be a huge advantage for Calgary to get this. Because if you do look at a lot of cities around the US, you go to downtown Houston, you go to downtown, literally doesn't matter, like downtown Denver, downtown Chicago after 5 p.m. It's quiet. It's not lived in. And then you go to some neighborhoods just outside of there, and it's very lively. There's a lot of people out, and it's because they have that housing density there. People are there outside of the 9 to 5 business hours, and that's really where you get that city and neighborhood that you want to live in.
Yeah, do you guys think that this is going to be like the new trope? Because for so long in TV and movies, like the industrial loft was like the setting, right?
Yeah.
They live in this lovely loft, the high ceilings. Maybe this will be the new one. It's like the office apartment or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait for the new sitcom based on young adults living in downtown Calgary in an office conversion.
And I mean, it's not even like our generation really loves, the office lighting, so they'll just keep that off all the time. Don't have to worry about lighting. You just have all your, side little lights. Like I have this ring light here, and you just use all the side lights and you don't use the harsh up top ones,
Yeah. Little lights win. My sister and I talk about this a lot. Lamps are way cooler than the chandelier or the light coming from the roof, whatever kind of light you've got up there. Little lights win.
The soul crushing office lights.
Yeah. Could you imagine? So I'm exciting. I am
you
exciting.
You are exciting,
but
Alex.
I am
you
excited.
Are.
I'm excited to see this continuing and to see more support for this. Austin says, Alex excites me. Smirk. Thanks, Austin. And Jen says, the hardcore people will brag about having a blinking tube light. Yeah, seriously. But this is fantastic. It's good to liven up the downtown core a little bit. We need housing, and so it's nice to see something being done about this. We've talked about this before. There are many things that we need to do. We're not just in one housing crisis, we're in many housing crises. It's a multitude of things that have led up to this, and it needs to be a multitude of things that gets us out of this. People need homes. Otherwise, it doesn't much matter what else you're up to in your city. But Ethan, let's get on to your story here.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get on to my story here. So, folks, if you haven't been watching the Weather Channel religiously like I have over the past 10 days, you may be unaware, but the southeastern U.S., specifically Florida, has been dealing with quite the issue of tropical storms and hurricanes. And these are major natural disasters that are fairly common in the region. However, it's just there's one little small thing that kind of is a little different that you might notice about these disasters too. And that is that they trigger evacuations of people. Since they're on such a large scale, and that they have so much of a prep time that people can actually evacuate from these storms. Now, the problem is in the US and North America at large is that we have a severe lack of public transportation. And this often results in people evacuating purely by cars, and I'm going to share a little example of what I mean by this here. This, I believe, is I-4 in just outside of the Tampa area, right by the I-75 merger. Actually, this is I-75 going into Tampa. My apologies. But yeah, if you can see, these lanes are absolutely slammed with just bumper to bumper, practically gridlock traffic there. And this, it's really just a big, or it's a small indicator of a bigger problem. And that is our lack of public transportation is lowering our resiliency for these natural disasters that occur and are going to be occurring at a more frequent, intense rate due to climate change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I remember we talked to Chad from the Cycling Embassy of Japan, and it was one of the topics that he talks about, and it's one of their main goals is to help with the preparedness of disaster, because obviously Japan's dealt with their share of disasters when it comes to natural disasters, especially with earthquakes and tsunamis. And one story I remember him telling was how there was a man who was leaving this coastal town, and there wasn't enough room in the car for his entire family, including himself. So he sent the family in the car, and he got on his bicycle to evacuate. Well, it was a tragic story because he survived and his family didn't, because they got stuck in traffic. And he was able to continue out of the region before the tsunami hit. And it's an amazing tool where, like you said, resiliency, it's about a multimodal factor. It's not just about bicycles or trains. It's about having different options so that we're prepared to evacuate in these circumstances. But yeah, I got to say I love the bicycle because you can just power it with your own two legs, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I've chatted about this with friends before about, the apocalypse. Sometimes it's fun to talk about that sort of thing, especially, when I was in junior high and high school. The big thing was like the zombie apocalypse, right? Like, where would you go and what would be your hideout and your setup and all of that stuff. And I never got too into the genre, but as a little bit more of an adult here now, thinking about it, I would ride my bike. If I had to evacuate the city, I'd ride my bike because my bike's not going to run out of gas. Even if I get a flat tire, I can still at least move a little bit, or at least pull it along as a wagon for hauling stuff. So I think there's like some good benefit. Austin mentioned specifically that I'm preaching the good news of panniers, which I'm always happy to do. But yeah, bikes are a great tool in a disaster. Obviously, with a hurricane coming up, I don't know if I'd necessarily be riding my bike out of the city, but that's why it's important to have multimodal options, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the situation, the disaster, what your personal life situation is like, right? I'm sure there are lots of people who have a long laundry list of reasons why they would drive their car out of the city and why a bicycle would not work for them. And I think that's fair. And I think we need to think of preparedness as exactly that, preparedness. We need redundancies and we need ways to be ready for these sorts of situations, whether that's trains, bikes, cars, emergency services, emergency vehicles. These sorts of things are critical in these emergencies. And before I let somebody else speak, I want to mention as well a video that I watched talked about how over 60% of Americans are one $500 expense away from just like being obliterated financially. And if you have to leave your home for a week, congratulations. You have blown your bank account on a hotel in some town far away, and you might not have the money to even get gas to go back to your place, if you have a place to go back to in these sorts of situations. And so I really think when we talk about people not evacuating, choosing not to evacuate, I think we need to be a little bit more charitable in our conversation about why they choose not to evacuate. And I think that's also a consideration that we should be making, especially as governments, local, provincial, or state, and federally, about our emergency preparedness programs. Is like, how are we actually going to support the average person, like normal people who live in these places? Yeah, That's kind of my broad ranging thoughts on this.
No, they're really insightful, Alex. I mean, that's why you're here. I mean, you do give the very deep, insightful things on, public policy and other situations like that. But I wanted to bring up a really good example here of a city that actually does do multimodal transit really well in terms of disaster preparedness, and that is the San Francisco Bay Area. Because not only do they have the San Francisco Bay Bridge, but they also have the BART tunnels underneath the city that are as well earthquake prepared and ready to go. However, while they had these two modes of transportation, during one of their major earthquakes in 1989, the Loma Prieta earthquake, the Bay Bridge was actually partially collapsed during the earthquake, shutting down all road and vehicle traffic. And that's a huge connection between Oakland and San Francisco. That is the main connection. And not having that, regardless of how inefficient cars are at transportation, is a huge choke point when it comes to just accessing the cities on the other side. So, following the disaster there, the city actually used federal emergency management money, FEMA money, to establish the San Francisco Ferry Service. So now in the event of another major earthquake in the region or any other natural disaster, they have the ferry system to help get people out of San Francisco or get to other parts of the bay rather than just relying on just the bridge and the tunnel. It's using that multimodal solutions, learning from your past mistakes and adapting to not have to face those same mistakes again.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Which also, if you're ever in the area and you want to just go for, a nice tour, just take the ferry. It's beautiful. Last time I was in San Francisco, I took it from Richmond to San Francisco to the Embarcadero. It's just a lovely ride. You get to go by and see what's that, Alcatraz, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful area. That bay is unbelievably nice.
And it's a piece of emergency resiliency that they built in. And it's not just resiliency, it is a wonderful way for people to commute on a normal day or for people who are visiting the town to enjoy it as well. I mean, these pieces of infrastructure are more than just resiliency to natural disasters. They really are a key piece of a city's transit infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. And, honestly, a great example of that is the interstate system in the U.S. that was largely built for the military, right?
Yeah.
But now, of course, it benefits a lot of people.
Thanks, Eisenhower.
Yeah. And so I think there are ways to do this. Jen in the comments brought up in Calgary we had a flood in 2013, and after that we started construction on a wall along the river that then, kind of using the 100-year flood numbers, will act as a barrier to protect our downtown and our homes and other things that we have along the river. But it's also a nice piece of infrastructure, and there's benches along it, and we've kind of created like a nice space along the river that also acts as emergency infrastructure. And so I think being prepared doesn't necessarily mean like building a bunker in your backyard. Being prepared can also just mean building quality infrastructure that benefits the people in the city on a regular day, but also especially when things go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for everybody too, right? It's not just about, if you have a bike, you'll be good and everybody else can suck it. It's better for everybody because if everybody's driving, we know what happens. It's bad for everybody.
We see it. We see it every time.
So I've got a question though. What if the apocalypse does happen and we're not here? I'm not going to survive. Come on. I'm not going to make it. But are there going to be like old defunct transportation modes coming back? What do you think? Like, is the hand cart going to make a resurgence in the apocalypse?
Welcome back, Omnibus.
Yeah, like that's the one I would bet on. The hand cart would become very useful. People will be building hand carts out of old bike parts for sure.
I've done that actually.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I've pulled a hand cart. Not like for anything serious or anything, I didn't go through an apocalypse without you guys, don't worry. But yeah, we've done that. That's a story I can get into some other time. you guys.
Was
but,
it wooden? Like, did it have the squeak and everything? It like squeaked as you rolled it?
Yeah, the cart was wooden, but it had
wow.
like bicycle wheels.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you got the wooden wheels, the wooden.
Look at that innovating.
But there's a lot of stuff, especially, like if the whole world's falling apart, there's going to be a lot of parts for a lot of different things that you can get real creative with. I do not expect that to happen. But
they've been saying it for forever.
He's ready to make a hand cart just in case.
It's going to happen eventually. Is it going to happen in our lifetime? I don't think so, but
I don't know if it is going to happen eventually.
Yeah, I don't think it's an eventuality.
I'm not convinced that the end of civilization or the end of human race is ever going to be
inevitable. That's a deep. Oh, we're gonna go super, guys. This is like a bonus episode we need to do.
Yeah. We can talk about that.
This is way
another
too far.
time. But I believe in humans. I believe in our ability to do awesome things. But maybe we'll do a bonus episode where we get deep.
You love that movie Armageddon, not just because of the soundtrack with Aerosmith.
No, I've actually never seen Armageddon. Admittedly,
it is a good movie.
Embarrassed. But are we ready for listener mail? Do we think we've...
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, unless you guys have any other questions, comments, or concerns.
No, I do have something that I want to share. I'm glad I put it in the notes. Otherwise, I totally would have forgotten. This is what you do when somebody's parked illegally in the way. And I saw this video on the Fuck Cars subreddit, and I thought it was great. So I'm just going to explain. There's two cars there, and these guys that look like they're rugby players, three of them, come and flip the car over onto the grass. And they go up to the next car and do the same thing to this other car and just flip it out of the way because people who were parked on the other side couldn't actually get out. And I thought this was pretty funny.
Interesting. Apparently it's pretty common in some places. My sister lived in Italy for a little bit, and she said everybody there would double park. And that if somebody had like double parked on you and you needed them to move, you just sit in your car and hold on your horn until whoever came out and moved their car.
God, that's so frustrating. I know it's a thing in Toronto or in New York City too. Double parking is pretty huge. It's wild. It's what happens when you have too many cars.
I'm only
going to
be in there for 5-10 minutes tops.
It's only going to be 10 minutes. Just wait. Hold your horses.
It's okay. I'm only blocking the bike lane for 10 minutes here.
Yeah.
Well, and
these hazard lights mean I can park anywhere.
Yeah, and we've talked about in the UK people parking on the pavement on the sidewalks there, eh?
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyways, this is why good infrastructure matters. But Ethan, why don't you take us into our listener mail
I
here?
will take us into this next section here. So this is a comment that comes from friend of the channel, Skitch, and she says, "Hey guys, last week was National Week Without Driving. I'm wondering if you can tell the audience about the challenge, for those who are unfamiliar, and whether any of you participated, intentionally or by accident, since you all use active modes and transit so much. Keep being amazing, Skitch."
Lovely.
Well, thanks, Skitch. I actually drove last week. For the first time. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I drove last week. I had a meeting outside of the city. So I don't drive very often, but last week I did. And it was fine. But the rest of the week I get around without a car. And honestly, once you start to do it, you kind of get a sense for it. And obviously I'm in my own situation where I'm a young single guy. I don't have a lot of times where I think, oh boy, I wish I had a car for this. So I want to kind of couch it with that the way our transit system is set up and the way our infrastructure is set up, it is easier for me to go without a car than it probably is for a lot of people to go without a car.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy sitting on the bus. It's kind of a vibe sometimes. We were talking about maybe getting some cool colored LED lights or neon lights to give it more of a vibe. But
this is totally not for us, like this week without driving, because most of the time the three of us don't drive. Like, I have a car, usually don't use it. But to take it straight from the Week Without Driving website is, if you can drive or afford a car, you may not understand what it's like to rely on walking, rolling, transit, and asking for rides. But for nearly a third of people living in the United States, people with disabilities, young people, seniors, and people who can't afford cars or gas, This is our everyday. So we created the Week Without Driving Challenge so that those who have the option to drive can learn firsthand about the barriers and challenges that non-drivers face and work with non-drivers to create more accessible communities for all, which is brilliant because when you first look at this on the surface and you might just be passing it by, you might think, oh, it's some kind of like Earth Day initiative, which can be a turnoff for some people, which I think is a bullshit thing, but that's not the point. I think it's great that it can get other people into it because they might want to know what that feels like to not have to deal with a car, because for a lot of people, that's their whole life is just being in a car. You know, they get driven around where they need to go as they're young adults, and they finally get their driver's license. They're given a car, away they go. So yeah, that's great. I didn't drive last week just because I rode my scooter and rode my bike everywhere, and actually got on the bus once too. But
Nick taking the bus, that's not common.
That's if I have to go downtown, then I'm taking the bus usually.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave my bike or my scooter out. It's, again, comes to the whole conversation about having safe bike parking. But yeah, I don't know. It was a normal week for me.
Yeah, that's an interesting initiative, though, kind of to be like, hey, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Let's see, how we can make it better. Because not everyone does drive. Not everyone can drive. And I think that's something that gets missed a lot of the time. Like, transit is not a luxury. It's a public good. And we really need to take that more seriously than we do. Jen says companies should run this challenge for their staff and help with education and have understandings if people are late due to learning how to get around. I think that's a really interesting point Jen brings up about there being a learning curve to using transit and to learning, how to get around by bike and things like that. And we've talked about that multiple times on the show, but I think that's a really great point, Jen.
What about you, Ethan?
Yeah, so I mean, I the most I did was carpool a couple of times, but yeah, I mean, pretty much the entire week I got around by walking, cycling, in the bus.
Nice.
And yeah, I'm a regular bus commuter here, so, I enjoy my bus commutes. I use that to really get some work done and just enjoy myself. It's a great way to get around a city.
Oh, man.
I did have a little story. I do want to talk about that, actually, now that I remember it. It's kind of a little crazy story. But I was taking the bus home on Friday last week, and I get on the bus. It's about 15 minutes late. It's kind of happens probably about maybe 10% of the time that it's more than 5 minutes late. But yeah, I'm on my way on that bus, and then it gets to this point of the route where it goes normally on a pretty crazy pattern, and the bus driver decides to just pull a U-turn, park at the next stop, get off, and try to talk with their dispatch about getting the route ideas. And then 10 minutes later, we're all on the bus talking, by the way. It's a crowded bus, and there's a lot of us on there that are kind of upset with this bus just kind of pulling off. And the driver's outside of the bus too, trying to contact dispatch. But while this is happening, about 10 minutes goes by, and one of the riders sees the next bus behind it coming by. And so she points and says, everybody get off, we're going to the next bus to get onto the station. And when I tell you everybody ran off the bus, ran across the street, and got onto the next bus, it was maybe one of the best moments of just like rider camaraderie that I've ever seen just on public transportation ever. It really was something, and it was just...
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It really shows you that you kind of actually create a community around the people that you ride with.
Yeah. So wait. Did the transit operator not know the route?
Yeah. So the driver didn't know the route. It was their first time on the route. The route
nobody
had
on
just
the
been
bus?
created 3 weeks ago. We were trying to help her direct her on the correct route.
Yeah.
And she just pulls a U-turn, doesn't listen to us, parks at the opposite direction station, and then gets off the bus and tries to call dispatch.
It's a rough day.
Yeah, it must have been a rough day.
Yeah. Geez. Well, I love the image of you all getting up. There's the bus, and jumping off and running for it.
Yeah, and I mean, people were like telling the bus driver to wait because there were people with strollers on board who wanted to get on this bus. So it was really kind of a nice moment of community.
It's nice to see. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's get on to the next question, and we'll move a little bit quicker. I know Nick has a very important appointment to get to, so we'll move a little bit quicker through these last two here. Nick, take her away.
This is from Jen Hall, friend of the show. Imagine there's a short film being made about you traveling around your city. What would the soundtrack be like? Ooh. Should I start? I'm going to start. Anyway, if you've seen my Netherlands series, that's what it would be. It's like, it's just city chill. I don't even know what it's a genre I love. Do you guys know the group Churches, the Scottish electronic? No. Oh, I love Churches so much. Just think of like modern electronic music that's almost made to sound retro. A lot of like gated reverb, like snare drums and stuff. Oh yeah, that's the stuff I like. You just think of like a very bright night scene with rain coming down. The lights are, reflecting off the puddles along the street. Oh yeah, that's me. How about you, Ethan?
I'd probably take like a nice chill synthwave kind of.
Synthwave, yeah.
Kind of like album, just kind of playing in the background. Whether I'm like cruising on my e-bike or riding the bus, that's really what I would be if there was a travel montage going through. Riding around Las Vegas.
That's what it's called, synthwave. I always forget. That's what I listen to when I'm working on stuff on my computer. I love it.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
I can dig that. I feel like that is like the way you get around in a city. Like that is the soundtrack to city, right? But I'm gonna go a little bit different. I'm gonna say folk music. I really, really enjoy folk music, and so I would. I'd be sitting on the bus and there'd be some strumming. I'd be sitting on the train and there'd be some plucking, and I'd be riding my bike and there'd be some stringing. I think that would be my soundtrack to me getting around town, because often it is my soundtrack to me getting around town. Jen says no John Williams Jurassic Park epic soundtracks. No, not for me. But let's get into this last one here. This comes from Mrs. Bifflechips, who says, I live beside a highway. I love my concrete box in the sky, but even cars being normally loud on the highway is relentless. My building is fairly new as well, but the only way I don't hear traffic noise is if the windows are closed and I'm wearing my noise-canceling headphones. There's also trams near me, and even the occasional steel-on-steel screeching is quieter than the highway. And I know Nick has brought this up before about living near busy streets and still having to deal with the noise, even though you're up in the sky. I have a few friends who live in up high apartments downtown Calgary, and you can still hear the road noise. It's kind of brutal how like actually loud cars are, even on the collector road near my street. Is like, even like the speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour. Like, we're not talking highway speeds. It's one travel lane in each direction. But it's still, you can, as you're walking with somebody and you're chatting with them, just the road noise from the vehicles, it makes a huge difference on how loud or how quiet the neighborhood is. Not to be underrated or understated. Cars are loud.
This is funny. They are. I was like, wait, I can hear the road noises right now. It's because my headphones weren't actually on the noise canceling. But yeah, it's the same thing in my, like what they just said, Mrs. Bifflechips. I love that name. Windows closed, noise canceling headphones on, and then usually I don't hear anything, which is nice. Invest in a good pair of these. Honestly, if you live near a noisy road, life changing. Like, I've had these for like 4 years, I think. These are the Sony's noise canceling version ones. The last ones. I bought the new ones recently. They hurt the top of my head, the strap. I had to return
Wait a minute, you don't have the Sony XZY 27,000s?
God, the names
I have the
so
Sony
dumb.
ZYX 2700s.
Yeah. It's terrible naming. I think it's XM 5000 or something. Does anyone? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah. How about you, Ethan?
Yeah, I mean, like, I live on a residential suburban street that's rated for 25 mile an hour top speeds. Does anybody do 25 miles an hour? No. Do I hear a lot of road noise outside my window? Yes. Can you go back and find road noise from my mic in this video at about the 20-minute mark? Probably.
Honestly, that was like so annoying when I like now my YouTube videos typically I'm talking to this mic which is, you know, pretty isolated, but I used to do like actually talking head camera at me had like a shotgun mic, and I could almost always have some noise in the background, like, oh fuck, I got to do that take again because there's somebody's engine roaring through, which is really annoying. But yeah, we talked about this. It was at the last show or the one before about just the effects. It was last show when we had Jamie on, the effects of noise pollution and the fact that we might get noise cameras in BC in some places, which would be cool. But yeah, it's a really big deal. And if you look, I think there was a poll done on, there's like a subreddit called r/polls, and they asked, would you support banning very loud cars? And the vast majority of people said yes. It's Reddit after all. Take it with a grain of salt, but that was good to see at least.
You know what? I'll take that Reddit poll as gold there, you know. I get to be picky and choosy. That one I'm choosing.
I do think we need to have a serious conversation about the public health effects of noise. Mm-hmm. You know, we have a lot of rules about when you can and can't mow your lawn. We know noise affects us, not just from a nuisance standpoint, but from an actual health standpoint, and not just from an ear health standpoint, but from stress, from hormones, from mental health, all that sorts of stuff. So I think it's worth actually starting to have a serious conversation about that. But yeah, this has been a great conversation. So I guess are we gonna wrap up?
Yeah, I've got one thing, which is a recommendation. I just finished reading a book called Our Crumbling Foundation by Gregor Craigie. He's a Canadian journalist. I think he's based in Vancouver. And this book is about the housing crisis, and it just came out this year, so it's very topical, it's very on point, and it's very good. And what I like about books in general, but especially urbanist books, is when they talk about the human story. And he focuses on not just the people like myself, like the millennials who can't afford a house, the Gen Z who look into the future, like, can I even afford rent? He talks to everybody. He talks to landlords. He's talked to people who bought properties just to use them as, vacation rentals. He talks to the people who are homeless, and he goes to all of the different areas and why this has happened. And at the end of the book comes forward with like a whole list of things that we need to do to get out of this housing crisis. And it was very informative and very eye-opening. And I highly recommend it. It's Our Crumbling Foundation by Gregor Craigie. Yeah.
Fantastic recommendation.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Nick. Ethan, do you want to take us away and wrap us up?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, folks, thank you so much for watching this podcast. We know it comes out on Thursday for all of you folks, but if you want to watch it as soon as it comes out or even join the show live, guess what? For just $1 a month, you can get in here. $1 a month. You can get into the show, watch live, leave all of your comments that you want. If you hate us, guess what? Feel free to come in and join the comments. But for $1 a month, you can watch the show live. Thank you so much for watching the show, everybody. Nick, where can the good people find you?
Oh, you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Threads. I've cut Twitter out. No more Twitter for me. So that's at
Wonderful.
Nick the Door, which is just Nick Laporte, but in English. Anyway, Alex, how about you? Where can the good people find you?
The good people and the bad people can find me on Instagram and YouTube at Humane Cities, and on Threads and Instagram at Alex Williams YYC. Ethan, where can we find you?
The good people and the bad people, I guess, but don't find me there if you're bad. You can find me over at Climate and Transit on all platforms. Instagram, Threads, TikTok, YouTube. You can find me at Climate and Transit. Folks, thank you so much for watching this show. And as always, train good, car bad.
Two wheels good.
And feet first.